Hey, so we're back. Co-host will be on shortly. You know, we are moms, and we also have to get our kids situated first before we do other stuff. So I didn't want to get any later. So co-host will be hopping on shortly. But thank you back. Welcome back to our channel, Racing the Races. Like and share, subscribe. If this is your first time here, this is a show about racing the races. We talk politics. We talk about current events, but more so to get people politically involved. And we talk about all aspects of government. And we've been on this trend with school board. We had our last guest, Aretha, last week talking about the school board. So we have Dr. Natalie Lynch-Walsh. Hey there, Dr. Natalie Lynch-Walsh talking about school board. And she is a veteran in this school board craziness that we got going on, especially in Broward County. And so we had some couple of issues coming up. There was talk about the superintendent getting fired, not getting fired, but guess what? Something has transpired. We're going to let Dr. Natalie Walsh walk us through the whole kit and caboodle. And then we will talk about it, discuss it, and then we'll also talk about what the community can do to be more involved in this level, and how we could be of service to the school board, as well as to our teachers and our students in Broward County. So without further ado, Sandra, please come in and say hello, so then we can introduce Natalie, Dr. Lynch-Walsh, so she can come in. I was just telling the people we had to get we mommies and all that. We got to get the kids situated and all that other stuff. So that's what you were doing. And you came in just in time.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. Yes, I had to make sure them kids ate just in case we needed to let this show run on a little bit longer than normal, because it is so much to talk about. And I did get a chance to listen to most of the school board meeting. I do believe I listened to all the important parts and how it all went down. And I took a whole bunch of good little vocabulary words from Dr. Lynch-Walsh's speech. You know what I'm saying? That wish casting was that is beautiful. So I was taking notes and taking words down and everything like that. But this is, we're smiling about this, but this is a very important and extremely serious matter. And I think part of what's I'm discovering is that the public doesn't really know how much is not being done and how much better the school system could be if the right people were in place, and I think this is important for us to kind of shed light on what's happening, and maybe people will be more vocal, and some of the things that are not happening at schools will happen if parents are more aware of the power that they actually have to get things done. Because I think a lot of the things that aren't happening in some of the schools is because they don't have parents that are out there saying y'all doing what? We're going to sue, or we're going to do this, or we're going to do that. And that's why they don't do it, because other schools have all these resources, but those are the ones with the very strong PTAs and the people who are paying attention to everything that's happening and that's in that building to talk about it. So that's why I think it's extremely important that we're having this conversation, especially with Dr. Lynch-Walsh. I know she ran for school board, and it's unfortunate she didn't get that seat, but she's extremely knowledgeable, and I think she was the perfect person. I mean, at least we thought she would be the perfect person to come and explain to us what's going on. And there's some things that I'm upset about, but I don't understand. And I think she could bring clarification to that, and at the same time educate the public on the need to really be more involved in the school board, because it's serious. It's really serious, and we definitely need to do a lot better.
Yep.
With parents and just community people.
Dr. Lynch-Walsh, you have the floor.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be back. I mean, we're smiling, but we were not smiling yesterday. And it is serious. It was 6 hours of some seriousness.
Yes.
And then a couple more for the workshop. And wish casting, I did not invent. That came from the grand jury report, but it fit the stuff I was hearing yesterday. So that's where that one came from. But I'm not sure I can explain exactly what happened yesterday, other than the superintendent it was a mutually agreed that they would separate. She and the district will part company. We think because there were about 3 motions at one point open on the floor, because there was the main motion, which was to terminate and keep her through the effective through the end of the keep her through the end of the year. Then there was a motion to amend that to do mutual agreement, which means she's not terminated. She doesn't have a right to severance, but they can give her severance if they want, which I'm happy, whatever it takes. And then there was a substitute motion made, and I'm not quite sure I can recall the details, except that I think it was to get more precise because Tori Alston wanted some dates, and I think they landed with 30 days. I believe there'll be negotiations next week that are supposed to happen. And frankly, with the way this has been going with termination, then there was a day we had to make like the termination had to stick. Then they rescinded, and now now it's mutual agreement until they actually have something inked. And it's her last day. I'm not sure I will really believe that there's an end, but we'll see. So, but that was a huge step because she got terminated by the reform board. And then there were people who, interestingly enough, because they were going, well, we need the newly elected people. If they terminate her, then we're good. So then they were doing that. And then they came back with, well, she needs to stay through the end of the year for stability. So it was never about the elected. They just don't want her to go.
Right.
Right. So because they had to find another excuse, as it was some of the same people that I had conversations with. So anyway, we'll see. I believe there should be a special meeting on the 7th, I think, of February.
I thought that from what I understood, I thought that Tori Alston wanted to have an agreement done by the 7th of February.
Yeah.
That way, when we go to the regular meeting on the 15th, they were in the process of agreeing to whatever vendor that they agreed to, because initially Fogan Holy made a motion to have something bigger, like, whoever gets the best candidate, but they wanted to kind of narrow it down. I'm under the impression is that they wanted to have an agreement done with the superintendent, give her walking papers so she can go about her business.
Right. So by February 15th, hopefully, because there's really no reason if you can pay her out.
Yes.
And then you put somebody in place. So that where that gets tricky is we're now towards the end of January.
Correct.
And I was talking to somebody yesterday that suggested, there's a life cycle to the recruitment process. So, and if you think about, like, we're at the end of January, they're trying to have somebody in place for July. So who's out there that doesn't already have a commitment, and who's left? So if you have people interviewing now for districts, like if you were going to be teaching at a college level, they're already making decisions. Most places for fall are not making their decisions at the last minute. Mm-hmm. And then the person that would come in has to leave a district. And how does that district recruit for their replacement? So I'm thinking that we might be a little late in the process.
Yeah.
And that some of the candidate pool has already shrunk, unless it's somebody that's just going to up and go.
Something that you mentioned at the meeting, and I want people to understand so you can clarify your statement. You mentioned that you would prefer someone interim rather than acting, and then you kind of gave the reasons and the differences. Can you talk about a little bit about that? And then before you do, Amy Shields said, I thought the agreement was supposed to be negotiated by 2/3. And I see you say where you messed up. Ignore that part. So 2/3 and approved by 2/15. Her end date is supposed to be ASAP, but definitely no more than 30 days.
Well,
I've heard that too.
Right. Any of those things could be accurate because of how the motion and the discussion went. And I had a splitting headache yesterday about halfway through the 6 hours.
I remember you said your allergies or your sinuses was working.
Right. They were in full bloom. Okay. So acting in theory would be somebody, and it could be interim, could be internal as well. They've done that too. So what they were trying to do as a board is, so before they were looking for an interim, which we're in a transition period, and you don't know what kind of candidates you're going to get. And you don't want to back yourself into a corner by saying, we're going to put somebody, because anybody that would be internal already has at least one job that they're supposed to be doing.
Right.
And some people have 2 jobs that they're supposed to be doing because they're already task assigned because they love some task assignments around here.
They sure do. Well, thank you to that organizational chart. But gone.
Yeah. So you're taking somebody, you're saying that all of these people are busy and they have important work to do. And then you're going to pluck them and have them be the acting superintendent. And in theory, anybody could do it for a few weeks almost. But in my 11 years of experience with this district, nothing ever goes according to plan. And unless you have a sure bet that you're going to have somebody for July 1, and plus we still have to get from now till then.
Yeah.
So something could happen and they get down the road a couple of months and they don't like anybody. And now you don't have anybody and you're trying to have somebody come in July 1st. But what if that doesn't happen? So if you have an interim, you have a plan. When Tori originally suggested Dr. Smiley, it was for a year. I got up, I said, you might need 18 months because at that point, a year would have taken us to the fall of the next year. And you want to have, complete out the year.
Right.
And it's going to take that long to stabilize some of the things that are unstabilized. And we have like the academic achievement. People keep talking about their goals and guardrails, which is what the strategic plan is now called. And if you look at the academic achievement levels that they're shooting for and really look at them, you realize that we're not moving the needle that much, which is why he keeps bringing up, what about the other half that can't read? What about the 40% that isn't on?
So that's important too, but can we go back a little bit to when you were saying about the superintendent? That Dr. Smiley, for some reason, it seems as though they don't want her to be the interim, because even in the conversation that I was listening to, they were talking about like who it is that they're going to be able to interview and not people that have connections with board members or something like that. I heard someone make a comment like we don't want somebody as the interim that has like an intimate relationship with a board member. And for some reason, it just seemed to me that they may have been talking about him and her. And I'm not sure do you know, or is there some sort of, or do you think there's some sort of resistance to her? And if so, why would that be the case? Since you've been more involved with the board than, at least me for sure.
Okay. So Dr. Smiley predates my involvement. But when I was first asking, I didn't hear anything bad about her. Like the group that was under Notter, when I came in, is the district like old fashioned, out of step, out of date? Sure. But then we took it to a whole other level with this toxic culture over the past 10 years. She was never part of that toxic culture. And the last time the district was an A-rated district was when she was here. I'm not necessarily saying she was the cause of it, but she knows what an A district looks like. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I think there's some politics involved in that who suggested her, although the second time it came up, it was the board chair, who is not a DeSantis appointee, but has been elected twice by her community. And she's the one that suggested it, having sort of gotten more information on Dr. Smiley. And then that got torpedoed. And they rescinded the termination. So in the meantime, the only thing I've heard recently is that she was interviewed by Chris Nelson. Dr. Smiley was. And some people objected to that. I haven't seen the interview, but I heard a positive review from another board member. So I haven't seen it. I can't imagine that she said anything that should upset anybody. I would hate to think that people got upset because she simply talked to Chris Nelson.
Right.
She has to be able to talk to everybody. That shows she's not afraid of dealing with different people.
Absolutely.
We have a whole problem where, you got a superintendent currently that runs from people. So I think, is there a Pompano connection? Yes. I mean, I don't think anybody can deny that. I mean, she swore in Tori Alston and she, the community is familiar with her, but there are people that are internal that have longstanding relationships with some of the older board members or whatever. And certainly the board members that were removed, there were people that had relationships with. I think people have to do what's in the best interest of the district and set aside whatever personal issues they have. Like if they're thinking it's politics, like I'm not going to go with your suggestion because you made it. Because that, even if it's in everybody's best interest,
right.
Her strength is curriculum and instruction. Where does the district need some help if we're looking at academics? In that area.
Absolutely.
That's the hard area to just find somebody that you can throw at the problem. So I'm not sure that people are thinking it through. And when you're trying to have a culture change and you're saying, oh, well, we have all these people here and any one of them, but you're trying to change the culture. How can you change the culture using the very people that are part of the culture that can't model the change that needs to happen?
Right.
I mean, some of them, just because they don't know any different, they've been in this immersed in this culture for 10 years. And you have to not be part of that in order to show them how they need to move forward. So I have heard rumblings. You know, there's a couple of people. I would like to think there's 5 or more people that would support her, because I think it's a little risky to marry yourself to a deadline when it's the end of January and you have no idea who's going to apply, and then say you're going to have them start July 1, regardless. I mean, what else do people do this way? Do you set there are some crazy women that have set deadlines when they're about to turn 30 and they'll just marry whoever. I have heard of these things happening. But we can't be like, oh my, I'm 29. I got to get married before I'm 30. Actually, I have a friend that I think did that.
Oh, that sounds like me. I was 27 and I needed to have kids before I was 30. So I had to get married at 27.
Well, see? But they're imposing this artificial deadline. Why must it be a permanent? We have no history of picking really good permanent superintendents, because if you're not good at something, give it a break.
Especially under pressure, right?
Under pressure. Look at yesterday.
Under pressure.
They couldn't even. It's 6 hours, like 6 hours under. That was them under pressure. It ended.
Well, listen, you know, she was fighting for her job now, because she spent like 2 hours trying to explain what she did. Listen, the whole time I was texting Natalie, she was like, I'm gonna make an outburst because I just can't take it. It was just and let's be honest, Natalie, the lies. That lady sat there on that dais and she was spilling the lies as if it was, I did that. I went as superintendent, I took care of this. And I was like, what? So I said to Natalie, she said that she was speaking to all the chairs every 2 weeks. I was like, Natalie, did you get a phone call from her? And she was like, no. It's just it was just compounding and compounding and compounding the level of incompetence. And it's just like, it was just this and then, you know, you have real issues in the district that she didn't even touch on, but she just kept on talking. It's like she was going on her checklist. She was just going through her
Everything has been a checklist for the past 90 days. It's all a checklist.
But what was also interesting too, and I don't even have the intricate details that you all have. I just noticed when I was listening to her, she talked about all the good things she did, and anytime something wasn't correct, it was somebody else's fault, right? It was, oh, the board didn't do this, y'all didn't tell me I need to do that, the instructions weren't proper, the support staff didn't tell me this, I didn't know. I was like, so all the good things is you taking credit for, but anything else, it was somebody else's fault that you didn't know this. And when she said that, oh, well, you know, the board members were supposed to tell me when to come into that district, I didn't know they all went to see me. I'm like, well, that's something that you should know as a superintendent of the district. If you wanted feedback on what it is that the community wanted, and you want to get a pulse of the community, you need to go into the community. No one should have to tell you that, right? So it was just extremely interesting to me how she would take credit for all of this stuff, when I'm like, there's absolutely no way in the world you did all of those things, because you just can't do all those things, because they're different skill sets, that it's not everyone's wheelhouse. So yeah, you didn't do all that. But then anything else that was wrong that they could have documented, or she couldn't disagree with, it was somebody else's fault. So yeah, and to want to keep somebody like that until the end of the school year, that's what I don't understand. I'm like, y'all sitting here too. This is not a fan club. To me, it seemed like it was a fan club. Like because they like her or they don't want to see her not have a job or whatever it is, they want to keep her there. I'm like, yo, this is not a fan club and this is not about her. This is about all these kids that's in the school that's not getting what they need.
And remember, Austin pointed that out. Remember, Austin was like, all these things about, the kids are going to get affected and all that other stuff. And then Dr. Walsh walked up and basically said the same thing. She's like, listen, my kid is going to graduate regardless. Right.
But I have a child that's special needs that, some schools that they don't have a speech therapist in the school and they're not going to get their services during the school year with the IEP. And then they're trying to get people to stay after school and go in the summer. And that would cost me money because now she can't get on her bus. I got to get someone to pick her up. So students will be affected if you continue to have someone that's running the district.
Right. If anything,
to hire these folks.
Right. It will be better. If anything, it would be less. It would loosen the control so that you could get the things you're supposed to be getting.
Right. Absolutely.
It couldn't get any worse.
Yeah. Remember, Austin was trying to explain. He was like, "Listen, this is not going to affect the kids directly. They're going to still continue going to school. They're going to still have teachers to be there.
It does affect them if she stays. It does affect them.
I think his driving point was, there was a discussion about, when she should leave and it should be 60 days or right away. He was like, I don't see an issue if she leaves right away. If she leaves right away, we're still going to be operating under the same conditions. And the other thing that they were talking about was the people that she came with. Oh, well, we're in a position that we're going to lose those people too. And I was like, I was so confused. I was so confused.
I don't doubt that a couple of people may leave or be asked to leave once you get somebody else in. I mean, if I were one of the two deputy superintendents, because those two positions didn't exist before Cartwright,
right?
And one of them was named in the grand jury, I would be nervous or planning. I hope that they can read a room. Because one of them's in the grand jury report and the other one is making almost $100,000 more than she was in Orange. And I don't know how effective she's been. If she's the most fabulous thing on the planet, she will probably be asked to stay. Or they may restructure because we did not have those two positions. And now the chiefs are all like, children under these deputies. So it's a layer of management that I'm not convinced. I know on the facilities side, it's not it hinders in terms of the flow of information.
Right.
Because everything, you have this bottleneck where everything, all this information and processes are getting stuck in the bottleneck.
Yeah.
Because one person
and I think them being gone is probably a benefit. That would be the extra money that they need to pay the speech language therapist so they can match the Miami-Dade and West Palm Beach salary, and we can get the employees that we really need in the district instead of people making almost $400,000 or $500,000. That's not necessarily adding much to what's at least to the betterment of the school district to me. So I think it would be a plus to just get rid of that salary and reallocate that.
Yeah. So they're talking, acting to pick somebody from internal. And that versus interim, which would be somebody from their thinking outside, but you can be interim and be inside. And then we get the whole conundrum, the whole big question. If you're interim, can you apply to be permanent? I don't think anyone cares so long as the rules are set up front and you stick with them. If you say, yes, they can, then don't change it. And if you say, no, they can't, don't change it.
Yep. Right. Absolutely. Because I think that was a disservice to us when that happened initially. And one of the board members at the time excuse was, oh, well, because of stability or consistency or what other words, I can't remember the other words that the former board member was using, but it was like, no, we still can't see that. We don't see where that falls into that, because you made a rule, you changed it for this person. And then, and let's be clear, the background of Dr. Cartwright wasn't all that gleamy and gloomy and all that either. She was coming from a place where they were trying to fire her anyway. So I was just a little bit annoyed that we even were in a position where we were taking some people's leftovers that were like, we don't want that. That's not what we want. And then we end up saying we want it. I was so confused with that. So confused.
Well, everybody gave her a second chance, and whoever comes in, I've already been I go, nobody gets a second chance anymore. That's it.
That lady has 9 lives. I don't know what you're talking about second chances. That was way more than second chances to me. That woman straight up has 9 lives. Cause please, y'all be nice talking about a second chance. That's
no second chance when she first got here. I agree, she's got 9 lives because I think they fired her 26 times. It felt like it. Yesterday was like 3 days rolled into one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I haven't been that exhausted in a long time.
Oh my goodness. She was working hard for that. When I tell you she was trying to fight for her job, and at the end she was like, stop this public humiliation, ma'am.
Listen, she should have been. Listen, I watched on the Florida channel when she had to go to the Florida Education Commission or whatever it's called.
Dr. Lynch-Walsh?
Listen, she was humiliated then. Like that woman, she should have came back and quit her job herself. Right? No, seriously, because when they were asking her a question about why didn't why isn't it the teachers got their money and all of this, she had some I don't know what she was talking about, but she basically said like absolutely nothing. And at some point she was kind of blaming Anna Fusco, but didn't really want to blame her. Said, I don't want to say I'm blaming Anna Fusco, but Anna Fusco, I don't know what she was saying. And they was like, well, can you get us some of Anna Fusco emails? Well, I don't know. I don't have access to that. I could just show you the one I have, but maybe y'all could talk to Anna Fusco and see if you want to give her emails. So she was talking all of this foolishness, right?
Oh my God.
It was so crazy. And then the next woman, so when I was like, what's she saying? But then, okay. So the next woman comes up and says, we met 13 times. We spoke on this, day, and that third. We tried to get to some sort of agreement. They didn't want to only deal with the money. They wanted to deal with the whole package with the benefits and all of that. We couldn't do anything. So we got an impasse. Now we're getting a court date. That's what we're doing. The person after that said, we spoke 6 times. We started in June. By the time we got to July, the school board was like, nope, it's an impasse. We've already been to court. We're waiting for our decision. Everybody else was able to explain what it is that they did, when they did it, how many times they spoke to folks, how far they got along. Another person was like, yeah, we came to an agreement. And then the BTU, whatever, their teachers union took it to the teachers, and the teachers said, hell nah, and they couldn't do it. They said, we didn't even expect that to happen. So everybody could explain what it is that they did and why these teachers didn't have money, but she came with the yang and emails and all of this. She should have been ashamed of herself.
She was the sole superintendent at that meeting that had nothing to say.
She could not explain why.
The sole superintendent that was like, oh, well, can you give us? She's like, well, we put everything on the website and we very transparent.
And I can bring you those. And she's like, if you give me an opportunity, I can bring you those emails later, lady. What you thought you came to do here today?
You know what I'm saying? So the man at the board said was like, well, can you show us some paperwork? She was like, I can give you the link to the website, ma'am.
It's on she said the process is explained on the website.
On the website, I can give you the link.
Not what she did, not how she did it. The process is explained. So this public humiliation, she humiliated her own self in public. And she needs to own that and just keep it moving.
She can't. She cannot own anything. Yeah. It's not going to happen.
I don't even know if she's self-aware because
she's not. By definition, she's not. I mean, obviously, I can't diagnose her officially, but if she is not a covert narcissist, then I don't know who is. She checks all the boxes that you can get help for it. I hope she gets help, but we're done. So, because we have too much to try to do, and every time I talk to somebody, I got something to add to the list to try to look up why something is the way it is.
Right. So,
yes.
So one of the things we talked about her. Hopefully she'll be going sooner rather than later. I think it's enough people with skills to keep the school district moving. So one of the things that we keep hearing about is this $21 million cafeteria. I think that's what it costs.
Yes.
Can you explain how? A cafeteria costs $21 million, and some kids don't have books, and some got mold and no playground and they can't fix a fence.
Let
we
the
can get a cafeteria that costs $21 million. I don't understand.
Facility task force chair explain it to you.
I need because you know,
we need clarity. We need clarity.
I'm not a math person. I don't understand.
So part of the problem is and all roads lead back to 2014. Well, and even further back, because Stranahan was supposed to get a full replacement, meaning the whole school redone. And then with the recession, that went out the window. There are drawings and everything. It would have been beautiful. So then you fast forward to when Runcie was here and they did the needs assessment. They were going to put on the existing cafeteria, if you've never been there, they were going to just put on a new roof, put in an HVAC, and call it a day and walk away. That was the plan initially. So then they fought, and this was 2014. So it's almost 10 years since they started the conversation. So then they fought, and I want to say it was in 2012, 13? Actually, it got to 2018. It took years, and they finally got them to agree to fund the cafeteria expansion because they finally had to admit the cafeteria was not a high school size cafeteria. So there are district education specifications. So getting to our favorite thing, the CCC, there are the condition 8, which speaks to bringing school facilities into parity with district standards.
Yep.
Has the indicator 8.4 speaks to minimum standards, and that's in 3 parts. So it's based on the state requirements for educational facilities and the district's ed specs, and again with SREF, which is part of Florida Building Code. All of those things is what's supposed to guide everything. In addition to the CCC should have guided after, as they were doing the needs assessment and deciding where to put money, but they needed to get the bond passed. So they gave everybody a little something. So then they were going to shortchange Stranahan on the cafeteria. So then they gave them, I think they had gotten up to like 10 million. And the prior program manager said, oh, well, you wouldn't do a replacement. He's on tape. Saying that you wouldn't do a replacement when you can renovate and get the same. And the board approved, I think it was 600 seats. They approved 800 seats. I want to say it was 600 in and 200 out. The way that state requirements for educational facilities work is it's based on the premise of 3 lunch periods, which a lot of schools have 2. And when you're an under-enrolled school, you can get away with that. But because it's all built to the capacity of the school, because in theory, you could make a boundary change, you could put in a magnet program, you can add kids to the school, but it's hard to do that if you make the cafeteria too small for how many seats you have at the school. So anyway, they got an architect, and the years are going by. It's 2017, 18, 19. They approved them to try to do a renovation. And I think they ended up with foundation issues because Stranahan is on a creek bed. And so they were basically trying to renovate when the cafeteria had a Castaldi, which is the analysis that you do to determine whether it's more costly to renovate versus to replace. Mm-hmm. So the sucker had a Castaldi on it, I want to say since 2005, since my high school senior was in kindergarten. And none of these Castaldis saw the light of day during the needs assessment and general obligation bond planning.
Hold on, wait a minute. So where was it?
Where was what? The Castaldis?
Yeah.
Nobody breathed that word out loud in 2014. And I think in 2014, I may have heard the word, but the significance, because the guy that was in charge at the time was from Chicago, where they have brick buildings and they don't have hurricanes. So he's like, oh, we're going to renovate. Like they sold the board on the idea that everything can be renovated. But what they meant, and in theory, even though they didn't ask for enough money, I think they were thinking we're going to do the roofs and the HVACs, then we're going to go back and get more money and we'll do the insides. Well, it's easier to do it all at once. And then just doing the roof and the HVACs dragged out so long that now everything else, hence the mold and all this other stuff and things falling apart. But as far as the cafeteria goes, nobody was talking about Castaldi's. Nobody was talking about structural issues, which, Rickards said, really? Okay, we're just going to collapse. So nobody was and there are people that knew these things existed, but that was not part of the conversation. So whatever happened behind the scenes stayed behind the scenes. And so finally, it came to light, like all of a sudden we're hearing Stranahan cafeteria. It's now like we're going into COVID, now we have supply chain issues, everything. We came way out of the recession. So now the price of everything is higher. And they hadn't built a building since, I think, before the recession. So, and cafeterias are, I think, more expensive than just say classrooms, because you have all that kitchen stuff and a lot of other things going on. So they approved in 2021, I think when Runcie got arrested, there was like a period of time that summer or before the summer, the second he got arrested and he was out, and they were meeting with the community, and it became clear that the renovation was probably not going to work. I go, well, in one of the community meetings, I started asking, well, how much would it cost to replace the building? And I just kept asking. And they finally, the board asked Atkins, and I actually just seen it because I was looking I want to say it was March or April of 2021, they estimated 21 million. And the board was like, oh, so that would be like another 10 million or whatever. And so then in September, when they approved the replacement, all of a sudden the budget was going to be 17.5 million. And then but before we got to
wait a minute. So they need to replace the building that they put the new roof and the new HVAC system.
No, they haven't done a roof.
They haven't done it, even though they got money like 8 years ago to do that.
They did the other roofs. I'm sure you know what? You actually raise a good question. Let me not open my mouth and say that they didn't re-roof it. I'm going to check. I'm guessing they've just patched it but it's still a couple years out. But I got I got to ask, what did they do to the cafeteria in terms of the roof and the I'm not sure. I imagine sometimes they patch it. If you're not going to put a 30-year
$10 million for like a new roof and a new HVAC, right? And did they never get this $10 million? Because now if you got $10 million to put a roof and an HVAC, and now you're like, oh dang, we just got to go tear this whole down and start over and spend $17 million.
No, they haven't spent it. I can tell you I am pretty sure that 10 million did not go into that building. It's the budget. Whether you actually do it or not is a different story. So we get to September, and then all of a sudden this reuse crops up, because we went through, can we do a reuse? We visited Northeast, we visited Boyd Anderson. Everyone's like, yeah, no, those won't work because of this. And we're like, okay, fine, no reuse. We thought we'd turn that stone over. Okay, fine. Can you legally stick with the architect you have? Yes. Okay. Can you stick with the construction firm that's already there? Fine. Okay. So then the only thing that was supposed to happen next was they get approved to do a replacement. And that didn't happen because enter this idea of reusing plans from a different school. And they sold the Fort Lauderdale EAB. It's going to be a year faster. It's going to be 15 million. So it's going to be cheaper than the approved budget.
Okay, so now I have another question, because I got to understand. So the plans that they're reusing, they have the same size and structure of the Stranahan High School. So when you're reusing a plan, it's a similar building that you're trying to imitate. Because I'm not sure I understand what reusing.
So someone found, an employee found a cafeteria that was being built or had just been built, down in Miami by an architect that's done a lot of work for the district. They're actually an architect they're reusing plans for Rickards Middle School.
Okay.
So it's Miami Palmetto Senior High School in Miami, and it is smaller. It was smaller than the school that it was built for. It just happened. The difference was in what's called circulation. So it was roughly the same size as what the original architect was planning with design from scratch, but the kids are packed in more because there's less circulation to move around. So when you look at the tables, they're closer together. So they went, remember the plan was 600 kids inside, 200 out. Now we're down to, I think, 504 inside. And I'm not even sure that that's not an exaggeration, because you actually, these are real people that are going to be moving in and out, and they're claiming they can put 300 seats outside. I want to see that happen too. Because again, you got to be able to get out of your seat, move around. So it didn't. So that was supposed to be 50 million and a year earlier than designing from scratch. There is the reuse just happened to be the one that was used at another school. And then it got delayed. In part, they had to redo the HVAC system because apparently nobody noticed that the HVAC system from Miami was not the type we use here. So essentially, long story short, they're paying as much for recycled plans that have been shoehorned into the space than they would had they designed from scratch, and it's going to take just as long. And we will never know what could have been designed from scratch because that isn't the road they went down, because they relied on 3 false assertions at least that were made by certain people. And the board
and the people who make these costly mistakes, because these aren't mistakes that's like, oh dang, you know what I'm saying, it costs $2 or whatever, right? So the people who make mistakes that cause the district millions and millions of dollars, do they get to keep their jobs? Like, how do you stay employed and you make a costly mistake like that?
Well, it's one of these things that nobody wants to admit to, because this ties back into they would have to admit they violated the CCC by exempting the cafeteria from SREP. So that's going to be a to be continued, because for the first time ever yesterday, people weren't afraid to say the letters CCC out loud. I actually was able to say the letters without somebody pouncing on me, telling me I'm trying to weaponize the CCC. I'm like, there's a reason you have it. It's to ensure equity. So so basically it's because this dragged on that it's now 21 million, because there's like 3 million of it was site work. And I think the cafeteria, some of the equipment was a little bit more, but it was like little things that kind of added up. So it basically is costing the same as we thought in the beginning. It's just that it's going to be this design that you're going to be like, well, why is this here? And why is because it wasn't ever meant to be in that space. And then another issue is the walkways between what will be the new cafeteria and the pre-existing building are old walkways. And that's not in the budget. And at some point I got to pop over there to see the condition of those walkways, because I don't know why you would build a new building adjacent to an existing building and leave walkways that in theory should be replaced, but apparently that's not in the scope. So that's how we got there.
So Dr. Lynch-Walsh. So there's people watching, people making comments. And I just want to get to those real quick. Some of them are pushing, we should send the board an email about Dr. Smiley. There's one person asked, did they remediate mold when they replaced the roofs and the Havocs? But apparently, Ms. Golan, that has not happened yet. So here's my thing. Sandra asked about those people who make these costly mistakes, right? At what point does the board, at what point, I mean, these things are, this is since 2000, I want to say, what did you say? 2014?
Well, depending, if we stick just with, since the SMART program, 2014.
Okay, so 2014, and new board members coming in do get some familiarity with what's going on, are kind of briefed and whatever. This new breed of group of people, some of them have made great strides, in my opinion, especially the ones that have been appointed. I know people be complaining about, oh, they DeSantis or whatever, but some things have moved since they've been there, right? Something like that. Like, at what point do we make a decision that people in those departments and that level are deemed incompetent and removed?
Well, this wasn't incompetence so much as politics.
Okay.
So this involved board members that are no longer with us.
Right.
A staff member that's no longer with us who facilitated the foolishness. And then some people that are still here, including the superintendent, because a year ago, November, the facilities task force says we passed a motion. We're like, we don't support going with this reuse. The director of pre-construction didn't recommend it. The program director for AECOM, it wasn't their proposal. But because somebody else has decided and the marching orders were to go with this fabulous reuse that's going to save time and money. And I'm like, it's not going to save time or money. And you're going to end up with this awkward shaped thing stuck in the spot. It was politics. And that won out. So now that the tide is turning, because I keep reminding them, I go, nobody's been held accountable. And when you put things that are false in writing, it's a form of perjury. Mm-hmm. And with the intent to mislead a public official, which is exactly what they did. And I I picked 3 easy things to show that this was misleading and on purpose. Mm-hmm. And nobody has said, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. This isn't true. They just don't want to touch it because it involved the superintendent the day after she attended a meeting where we're all like, yeah, this is not a good idea. She had them upload the reuse recommendation. She did the exact opposite of what the three different factions that should have dictated the action told them to do.
But she said she's listening. She said she listened to your input. You know what I'm saying?
She was listening to the input of people to catch what we're going to keep.
Bullshit. Why you bringing up old stuff? Why you bringing up old stuff? That's what she's saying. Why you bringing up old stuff?
If she didn't listen, it's because somebody else gave her bad information. It's not her fault. You guys didn't explain it right.
Okay. Oh, you're right. We didn't explain it right. I called the woman on the phone like 2 days later. She told me she would lean into it. I'm like, okay, I'm still waiting. You're leaning in the wrong direction. And you're going to lean right out of Broward.
She sure did. Got her walking papers. But anyway, we appreciate you explaining that $1 million.
$20 million. I mean,
so don't be shocked.
How they got there, but I still don't explain. I still don't understand why cafeterias cost $21 million. Like
they just do. So hold on to your hats. So Markham is getting a new building. That's $30 million.
What kind of building?
It's the main building. It's going to be a huge building. It incorporates a cafeteria. It's like most of their campus, except for the media center, I think.
For the students that have class or something?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, if you saw Markham, I went there, and you talk about smell. There are some things you cannot clean out of a building. You just can't. I watched my child's trying to sneak. I think she's going to snake along the floor because she realizes you're on Facebook now.
You don't care.
I saw her walking too.
They used to care. They used to care, but now they don't. And they keep printing as we're doing this.
Of course,
yeah. Why not?
We got assignments to do, Mom. I don't know what
you know what I'm saying.
We got work to do. We got take us to print, honey. Stop. Don't get.
But my print is to the side. Like I have one in this room too, but it's on the side, so they don't have to come in camera view.
Take care of, and you know, Dr. Lynch-Walsh, you be like, so that homework wasn't done. Is that what you're telling me? So they got assignments to do. They're not in your. Listen. They don't want no problems with you. They don't want. So cafeterias, everything is more expensive in 2023 than it would have been 10 years ago, 5 years ago. We're going to be waiting to hear how much Bethune's new administration building is going to cost. You know, Parkway.
But Bethune is the school that has like the buildings that have mold that you can't do anything with, that have inhabitable buildings on their campus. Is that the school that have like three buildings that you can't.
Oh, there's
function?
building 5. Building 5 is the one that they have not used for 10 years.
But building 6 and building 5 are shut down. They don't use them two at all.
6 is now shut down. When we were there, it was just building 5.
The
AC wouldn't let me in.
The AC doesn't work anymore, and as you know, the ACs are on the top of the roof, and they've been there since 1958, and they can't. There's no replacing them without replacing the roof. So
right. So here we are.
5, 6, and I think there's 3 buildings that are not being used. 5, 6, and I want to say building 4.
4. That sounds right.
There's another one on that side. That same.
Yeah,
side.
I think it is 4. But they're finally, they went there, I think, around the beginning of the month. I think they went there again. So I'm going to keep asking, what's the plan? Because you got to give us an estimate. Come with an estimate. I'm like, I start every estimate, Sandra, at like 20 million. Because there's not going to be a building unless it's kind of smaller and simple, like a modular or a portable, that's going to be less than 20 million. Administration might be.
Can I tell you, since I've already put it out there and it's on public record, that we went to one of the, we talked about site visits, and we talked about one of the schools we went to, and one of the project managers was like, oh, they've only allotted $250,000 for this building. I said, what you mean? To replace the building, but to renovate the building? And then their own person was like, I don't know how that's going to happen, but that's what they've allocated.
$250,000?
That's it, for like a specific building. And then they said there was another 950,000 for another building. And I was like, well, who comes up with this amount? Who makes the decision on what that looks like?
Well, that's where the budget. So the thing that was killing Stranahan for years is the budget for the cafeteria. Everybody has tried over the past several years. They have spent money designing things that will never work because they're trying to fit into these budgets that were not realistic. And then they were getting beat up by the prior board, especially when the prior board wanted to get reelected, or when the grand jury report was in. They're like, oh no, we have to go faster and cheaper. So yesterday, one of the comments that the superintendent, that Dr. Cartwright made, was about, oh, and now everything is on budget and on schedule. I'm like, hold up. The schedules were wish casting again. The schedules were unrealistic. They were, some of them, 2 years behind, and they weren't updating it for reality. So everything was behind. So then when AECOM came in, they trued up the schedules. They're like, that wasn't realistic. No, that, and these were the substantial completion dates that had already passed. So they're always going to be behind because you were never going to make that date. It's gone. So they fixed all the schedules. So yeah, it's kind of hard to not be on schedule because the schedule keeps moving. There are things that were supposed to be done in 2023 that are now going to be done in 2025. Yeah, they're on schedule, but they're not when the people were originally promised them.
Exactly.
And then in terms of being on budget, the budgets get trued up when they go to the board for approval. So as of, until then, they're doing the 2014 budget, and Atkins is pretty good at estimating. So it's very rare that a budget gets out of control once they've gone to the board for the money that they need, unless, something massive happens, like, the Rickards Middle School roof caves in, because we've now paid for a roof twice for Rickards, one for the one that collapsed, and now we're paying for a whole new building. So they did get insurance money for that, though.
They did, right.
Okay.
John Daly Sr. stated, I think it's important to understand that there will be a national search for a permanent superintendent, and then an acting or an interim will not be eligible for a permanent position. That makes a mistake we can't repeat. That's a mistake we can't repeat. By allowing an acting super to be eligible will drastically reduce the pool of applicants. That's how we ended up with Cartwright. Yeah. That's what happened the first time.
But
and they changed the rules.
Yeah, you said whatever rule they're gonna get, they just need to stick to it, right? So if you want to have whoever the interim be eligible, just say that, go with it. If you say no, then just whatever you decide in the beginning needs to be what you go through. Is the position that you need to take through the entire process is all what I would say to that. So
wait,
these.
Zara made a point, and I just want to point this
Go
out.
ahead. Yeah.
I think that is very important that she said that if all of these things with facilities are such a disaster, how will student safety and achievement ever be a priority? I think Dr. Lynch-Walsh, when she doesn't only does facilities, but she also talks about that student achievement and priorities, because it does tie in. When you don't have a functioning school, how can the staff and the teachers focus on getting the kids where they need to be if they're always being concerned about where they're going? Doing site visits myself, there is a grave inconvenience while all these renovations and constructions are going on, where people are herding kids to one end of the school or the other end of the school. And this is why Dr. Lynch-Walsh is so passionate about the facility things, because it messes up everything. It's just not facilities. It affects the kids directly.
Right. Facilities, you can't separate what's going on with facilities from everything else.
Right.
You just can't.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. What was your question, Sonia? I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. That's what I was gonna say. Like, you have students going into buildings that have mold in it, because mold affects a person's health. Half the time people are sick and they don't even understand why, because they're breathing in some sort of mold. So I don't even know how the schools are even taking chances having children go into buildings with molds. Clearly their parents don't understand that you can go ahead and absolutely sue a school district for exposing your kid to mold. And I think at the very least, somebody needs to go in and say, y'all need to get an environmental scientist up in here to see what is going on, because mold can cause depression, all kind of respiratory issues, all types of things that affects learning. So to me, the fact that there's a possibility that students are in buildings with molds, like, that blows my mind. I just don't even understand it. I used to have an apartment, and and the roof is, the association is the one that manages it, right? And they needed to fix it, but they couldn't fix it because it was flat and it would rain, and then the rain would settle. But it brought mold into the unit. I had to move the tenant out of the unit, because if I didn't, they could have sued me for exposure to mold, right? Now I'm like, I'm just one little old person with one little unit, and I had to move them out until that was resolved. So the fact that the school is willing to even play games with people's lives like that, like, I don't understand. And clearly the people that are walking into those buildings don't understand their rights, because that should not be the case.
Yeah, no. So a couple of things. When we brought up mold, BTU did a mold survey several years ago. And when we brought it to the attention of staff and the prior program managers, and we asked point blank, is mold remediation part of the SMART program? And they're like, no, it's not part of it.
Hold on, wait a minute. You're not going to glaze by that. You're not
only if they see it, measure it, and they see, like, if they come across
it. No, ma'am, I'm going to need you to go back. What you say now? What you said?
When we asked, we did what you did. We were like climbing over the table. Like, what do you mean? It's not mold remediation was not part of the scope of the SMART program. Now, if they saw it in their face as they're opening up walls, they would deal with it. But if it's hiding somewhere, they're not going looking for it.
Listen, by the time you see it in your face, it's been there for a long time, and it's a whole bunch of bigger problems by the time you see it in your face.
That is what they told us. And now there is a process where you can report you can make a complaint, an IAQ complaint, indoor air quality complaint. But what generally seems to happen, we always get this speech from the district. There's mold everywhere. We live in Florida. There's always mold. There's an acceptable level of mold, blah, blah, blah.
Acceptable? That's the words we're using?
Yes. So that's one of it's been very hard to get mold taken seriously, because they consider there to be an acceptable level of mold. There's a lot of things that sometimes people that have, I think, become immune to the seriousness. Like, we have an issue going on right now with Peters Elementary. And since 1992, there's been soil contamination. And since 2018, the county has been like, you guys need to handle this. It looks like they were trying to get state funds to get rid of it. Well, long story short, they had kids walking past. They were dropping sod and mulch on top of the area because it's like 4 feet down. But then there were places where they were digging it up. When that's something they should do when there are not kids present. And so at our February meeting, we'll be getting to the bottom of what were you doing? What's the remediation plan? But this has been going on for years, and it's the first I've ever heard of it.
With what? The soil is contaminated with what?
Something that causes cancer.
You got to be kidding me.
But
you got to be kidding me.
I can't. I'm not. No, I'm not.
No way. I'm sorry. I almost cursed. Ain't no way. Ain't no way.
It's a social. It can cause. It's one of those things. So, but it's down. I guess they figured it's underground, and as long as it's not, rising to the top, we're good.
What neighborhood is that in?
It's at Peters Elementary in Plantation. In Plantation. Sorry.
Plantation or New Plantation?
It's not that old, not as old. Like it's Peters is between. It's off of Sunrise. It's more older, northern Plantation, so north of Broward.
Okay.
And Peters is east of University, but not by so much. It's near, Peters and Mirror Lake are not that far from each other. And then where Plantation High, Middle, the whole 9 yards. But it's the first I've ever heard.
That's on Sunrise. I know where that's at. That's over there. I know it's Sunrise.
Yeah. So it's the first I've ever heard of it. And it's the second environmental type thing. The first was like drainage across the district. They were not maintaining the drainage systems. They then got funding. So now they're going to be maintaining that. And now we're hearing about this. So the next question is, what else is out there that you guys know about or supposed to be addressing, but for lack of funding or whatever the problem is, you haven't dealt with it? So that's like a current one. And there were people digging up we're like, what are you doing in the middle of the school day? There was caution tape, kids walking by. I have tons of pictures from somebody that was there and took pictures. So in terms of if you have a mold problem, they can file an IAQ complaint. But, a lot of times the teachers don't want to do it because then you got to tell them what room it is. And then which teacher is reporting it. So
I heard there was a letter that I saw online on Facebook that said that she has an open door policy and people should not be afraid to come and speak and talk about things because,
okay, so
I saw the letter. She sent the letter out. It's an open door policy. Come to talk.
I've never gone through that open door of hers. I don't know.
I haven't. And was this open door policy before or after her organizational chart? That's what I'd like to know. Before
it was after the 90 days. After that 90 days kicked in.
Somebody asked, can you explain what IAQ standards for please?
Indoor air quality.
Indoor air quality.
Yes.
Yeah. Listen. This is why we're really happy to have you here because you're not afraid.
Wait, so I guess we're happy to find out, but my head hurt. Like, is all I'm gonna say. Like, I'm sitting here, like, I think I've had a frown on my face like most of the time, and I'm just like, they doing what now? Like, y'all serious? And that's why, this whole distraction of her being here has to stop because we can't keep trying to keep your job and not be able to deal with things that really need to be dealt with, right?
Absolutely.
We should not be like who's working where and who got what position. It's like we can't spend no more time on that. That's literally been happening since the school year started. We like 6 months deep into this. It's time to say, okay, listen, what are we going to do about contaminated soil in the school? Like, that is mind-blowing to me, right? And then the other thing I was hearing about in a meeting was that there's one of the schools where you could just step over the fence, you know what I'm saying? And then, it's supposed to be a safety and security thing, and how is it that you can step over a fence? I'm just like, wait, you can do what now? I drive to my daughter's school. I got to pull out my driver's license before I get there. I got to show her the license in front of a camera before they even open the door. But there's a place where you can just step over the fence and get in the building? What is this?
Well, I think you may be talking about Blanche Ely, and because the fence is very low. So, but here is the rationale that's used. They went and looked at MSD, and the fence was the same height. Ergo, there's no problem. Because if the fence height is appropriate for MSD, it's okay for Blanche Ely. Except that they're saying, you know, that the Blanche Ely neighborhoods are not, it's like you can't have it both ways. If you say that you have issues at a school, but you're trying to get out of it by saying they don't need a higher fence, because look, MSD has the same height. It's a whole culture change that I believe we're on the verge of getting with her going, because there are a lot of issues. Because one of the things you hear from people trying to defend her is, oh, these are all issues from the prior superintendent. Okay, yes, but her go-to response is to try to gloss them over or cover them up, instead of her being outraged and wanting to fix them.
Exactly.
And that's because of her own ties to board members that aren't here anymore.
Yep.
It's not her attachment to the ones that are here. They're not trying to cover things up. It's the ones that are gone. And she's still trying to gloss over, cover up. For what I don't understand.
She's getting herself in some sauce that she don't need to be in, right? Like, you go there and keep trying to protect them, and then you're gonna drag yourself into a situation that you didn't need to be a part of. So I don't
so
understand.
The people that did she create these problems? No, but you know, the one she did create was the Stranahan cafeteria. That's on her. Right. Because she had the opportunity to do the right thing and she chose the wrong path. So that one she can't blame on Runcie. There's a lot you can blame on the prior administration, but you can't. She became embedded in the culture instead of changing it. So she can't change it. So she has to go for the culture to shift.
Yes, right.
And where we get to being honest about what the problems are and just whacking away at, you know, there are things you can tackle globally that will make a difference. And then there are things that are, you know, things you have to tackle one at a time, like the soil at Peters or Bethune needing a new administration building. There are other schools that have buildings that need to be demolished and replaced, like Bennett Elementary. And then what to do about schools that are half empty. And then you have all this administrative space that you need to discuss what to do with. There are a lot of conversations that were put on hold for almost 2 years. So because all she wanted to do was keep her job instead of tackling the problems. And even with the board members gone, she still continued. The long range plan steering committee that I was told that she said they never met. The steering committee has never met. Okay, but there's work happening with no steering going on.
And this is one of the things we pushed yesterday at the meeting, because someone from our committee has to be part of that conversation.
The steering committee, right? Yeah.
So and that's the thing. The chief facility officer, or
that's the position.
Who is that? She decided not to hire.
What? There's no
facility. She decided not to hire at the last minute. Like, she was like no to them.
Oh no, she was trying to say yes. We 3 times we had to put the kibosh on that.
Okay.
Yeah, okay,
no. So Mr. Daly's talking about, he said, like, you're gonna have mold if the roof and the HVAC isn't fixed. I totally understand that, but you know, it's a whole lot of people out here want to work. Like, I don't understand why all these things take that much time.
Yes,
so.
Well,
because nothing happened in the beginning, and not all the buildings, because everything took time, you have the stuff that was in the SMART program and then the stuff that wasn't deficient when we started, but are now coming due. So all that deferred maintenance. I mean, we were at Broadview, which is a school that should have been replaced, but by the time that I got there and heard about it, it was all, Markham had already happened, and they already had a roof, and they just I think they had put the HVAC in, and they were starting on the roof. And there's not enough money currently to do everything the way it should be done. So there's like some give and take and compromises, but Broadview has a newer cafeteria. There's a leak. Bethune has newer buildings where there are leaks and water intrusion.
Yep.
It's like you have to maintain before these things become bigger problems, and there's deferred maintenance all over the place. On top of it.
Not only that, but throughout the district, you have What is that the custodians or the head facility people at the schools call, they have work orders. These work orders are so backed up. I've seen work orders that was back in 2019 that still haven't been dealt with.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something we're going to discuss at the February meeting.
At your meeting, I'll be at your meeting, because it's not going to be at the same time as my meeting.
Right, that's the whole point. So I saw a board member follow-up that since 2019, like 300,000 work orders have been created.
Live.com.
Well, no. So the open one,
created. They might have been created. Whether or not they've been resolved is another story.
Like there's like 11,000 or something that aren't. Maybe it was 16,000, and they broke it down by year. I said we need to know what type, and so that we can what is it you're not doing, because that's a lot. And so just so you know, 2019, I think, is when they started putting stuff into Maximo. So it begs the question, is that everything, or what happened to the stuff that was in the old system? Because we're not sure that they pushed everything from the old system into the new system. So there could be stuff from before 2019, because Stoneman Douglas happened in 2018, and that's when we stopped having access to seeing work orders.
Right.
Because you used to monitor it, and Scott Travis at the Sun Sentinel, he would, catalog like how many work orders, and they would like monitor it that way. But we don't know what's outstanding until I saw that board member follow up. I'm like, I think we're backed up again. So so we're gonna have a conversation.
They're advocating in the chat for you to apply for the superintendent position is what I want to tell you.
They said that either you apply for the superintendent position or you be the facilities chair, the facilities.
Apply for the chief.
Chief position. That's what they say.
Well, I appreciate it. We'll see. Because when I was being truthful yesterday, this was the weirdest thing. This woman that was sitting 2 seats down from me after I got done speaking the first time, she goes, "That was disgusting." I'm like,
"Oh, we know who you're talking about, girl." Because she came.
Yeah, I said, "Well, it was truthful, but thank you." Because I don't know what to say to that. I go, "Did I swear? I was trying not to. Like, what did I say? Oh, I was being truthful. Okay." And then later, I'm like,
"This is the same person that stood up and said she is being attacked and disrespected, and she is taking it for the team, taking it on her chin, and people are being visceral and nasty and on and on and on." It's like, lady, you don't even have skin in the game, but you out here advocating for someone that you don't even know. She doesn't even know the level of incompetence is going on in the district. She has no idea. None. No idea.
There were some weird public comments yesterday from people that I'm not even sure what planet they were on. There was one in particular. I'm like, where are you from? Why are you here?
So I was saying that too with some of the public comments. I'm like, y'all need to be able to tell that person, no, y'all can't talk, because I don't know what you're talking about. No, seriously, like, you want to hear from the public, but dude, what are you talking about? Like, I don't understand. Like, and then they come up every time. I'm like, yo, you about to take up 3 more minutes of my life? Why? Like, just go away already, right? You don't need to hear everything. Like, yo, put that in a note, brother. Just don't come here. So, I'm listening. I'm an attorney. I understand free speech and right in public. I understand all of that, but sometimes it's like, listen, you wasting people's time. We got too many things to do to just sit here and let you talk this nonsense that ain't got nothing to do by nothing. Because this is just way too serious, to be wasting time. The
minute the chair says stay on topic, and then I have to tell you, you won't catch me telling you that twice. I'm cutting your mic off. Your mic will get cut off, and you're gonna have several seats, and then you're back and forth with the chair saying, this is about the subject. No, it's not. You came in here for one reason and one reason alone, has nothing to do with
it. To be a nuisance, and no one has time for that today.
You're out here being a distraction. Go sit down, sis. We trying to get rid of the superintendent. We want to give her her box of stuff like she did to people when she did her organizational chart. When they came into work that day and they had a box because they were fired, we wanted to do the same thing.
She told them she gave them the option of resigning. I think she said they could resign or get fired, but they were leaving that day.
You got an option for mutual separation, and here's your box of your stuff. and you gone. Here you
Wait,
go.
she agreed to mutually separate, but she wanted to stay till June 30th. I was like, oh, so you want us to break up but stay in a relationship?
No,
I wish I could get somebody to do that. Like, yes, we're gonna break up, but we're gonna stay together.
Break up and still live in the same house until June.
Yes, we're gonna break up but stay together.
We're trying to move on, so you have to move out.
And I know you don't like
clean break.
I'm doing.
Clean break.
You know what I'm saying? I know you don't like any of the things that I'm doing in this relationship, but I'm gonna keep doing them, and we're gonna stay together, but we broken up. Understand that? Okay.
When she was on that dance yesterday, she was like, her whole mood was like, I'm gonna make you love me. Okay, you gonna love me, all right? And we gonna stay. I'm staying. I ain't going nowhere.
Okay, all right, y'all. We had to listen. I needed to laugh because I'm telling you, like, I straight had a headache and I didn't think I could get these. I don't do Botox, but I think I needed something to keep that frown line from right here. Because you see the lines on my forehead, but I had the one right here that I needed to loosen up.
This was look yesterday at the meeting. I'm like this the whole time.
She was.
It's too much because this is real. I mean, this is real life. These are real people, kids that are at jeopardy, and they keep talking about students first, and it's all about the kids. But I'm like, we haven't been able to talk about anything that we can do for the children. And then it was somebody who was asking for some more money or something, right? They wanted to extend the contract. They're like, well, show us how what you're doing is benefiting the children or something. And I think they had like one example or something. You might have commented on that. They're like, well, let's just maybe give it like 12 months so we can get more data to figure out if what we're paying you for is really helpful. And there needs to be more of that, right? Because people just come, you can tell when folks come in to get their contracts extended or whatever, they take it for granted that they're going to get it without them even having to show that what they were doing has been beneficial to the district. So
yeah, that reminds me, the grand jury, the firm that they wanted to have do the grand jury audit or review or whatever, that's going to be $135,000, but I don't see that happening. But that's more to come on that one. As far as, because you mentioned earlier what people can do to get more involved, there's an community tab, and then there's an advisory for pretty much anything you can think of in the district. And like on the facilities task force, we're supposed to have a rep from each of the high school zones. We're starting to get more people that are being sent from the different zones, and you need to contact the principal zone rep, which I need to put, I think we got the list the other day, so I can post that to Facebook or send it to you guys to post it, like as much as people share it out, and you contact the principal zone facilitator. And let them know you're interested. In theory, the way it used to work is you'd have iZone meetings, and all of the people that are on SAC and SAF would attend the iZone meetings, and you would pick a rep that would represent the whole zone. But because those haven't worked the way they used to when I first started, now it's like the principals are like, you interested in facilities? Okay, you're the zone rep. Okay, and so that's how we've been getting people. But if we can't be everywhere, diversity can't be everywhere, but when we have people that are in the trenches, so to speak, at each of the schools, that's how we know what's going on. And then, then it starts really getting overwhelming because you start finding out things about schools that you didn't even know existed. But I'll have to see if they can put the list of zone facilitators on the website. Let me make myself a note for facilities, because that would be easier to send people to the district website.
I can't hear anything.
And that way they can come. And you don't have to be a member to attend the meeting. The next meeting is February 9th. We meet monthly. We also meet online. We have subcommittee meetings, but unless you're interested in the subject matter, it might put you to sleep. But 7 to 9 p.m. at Plantation High School in the Media Center, the second Thursday of the month. And then you guys are the first Thursday at KCW, so they could attend both meetings.
Yeah.
If they wanted.
Absolutely. If they want to.
Yes. So I'm trying to think if there's anything.
You're asking about Fairway Elementary. You can reach out to Dr. Lynch-Walsh. She's having meetings. She just mentioned her meeting is going to be February 9th. What at Plantation, right? Plantation
High School in the Media Center, and Fairway Elementary is on my to-do list. I have not forgotten. We've just been a little busy with, we had to do triage on the issues this month. Yeah. So, but I have Fairway on the list.
I think all our committee meetings are on the website. It has the dates when we meet. And so you can always join us. I think we do once a month, and then we do our subcommittee meetings via virtually. We don't normally meet face-to-face for those. But I'm definitely going to your facilities task force meeting on the 9th because ours don't fall on the same day.
So they're asking, do you have a virtual option for the facilities meeting?
We do have a link. The link is also on the website. So if you're not a member, so members are required to attend in person, but any member of the public can go to the community drop-down menu on the district's website. And under advisories, if you find facilities, and you should also be able to access it through the district calendar.
Yep.
And it's a Teams link. So yes, absolutely. They can attend.
Michelle asked that question. So Michelle Granoff, you can there is a link for the meeting.
Michelle knows there's a virtual link.
I wish you could come to the meeting co-host on the 9th because Child's supposed to be juicing.
What day of the week is that?
Thursday.
Thursday.
Yeah,
I'll see what I can do.
Girl,
I'll see what I can do.
Off
Yeah, no. Thank you so much for this. And it's important. This is, whatever happens next month, maybe we can get you to come back and we can talk about that and see what that's going to look like moving forward. Yeah, it's a lot that needs to be done, and then the involvement that you talked about, that's really important. I know I'm going to find ways for me to do more, stay more informed. But for me, I don't only want to get frustrated. I want to know what I can do in order to make it better, or just at least bring at least more awareness so we can get more involvement, because there's really yes, some things are going to take time, but we should definitely be able to be more ahead of what it is that's going on than it is right now. It seems like all of this, nothing getting done, roofs falling in, kids deal with moles, buildings standing for 10 years that should have been torn down. I just can't imagine that there's a backlog that's really 10 years behind. It just seems like a little too much for me to understand.
There were no decisions being made on like Parkway and Broward Estates, no decision. Bethune, like they just kept getting shoved, further and further back because there was no the answer was that they're going to need more money. So that just kept getting pushed back. Until they couldn't push it back anymore. Yeah,
thanks for the explanation. Because to me, it's like 10 years to tear down a building. Really, like
they just nobody fessed up that that's what needed to happen. I'm like, what do you mean? They haven't used the building in 10 years. Obviously, it needs to go.
Yeah.
Just tear it down so they know you care.
Yeah.
So,
some people say they want to get involved. I think it's Shawnee EW. Just go to the community page that Dr. Lynch-Walsh mentioned, and there's nothing but all these committees.
And there's the community page on browardschools.com.
That's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so browardschools.com.
Yeah, community should be the tab, and then you drop down to advisories. But also the district calendar shows you when all the advisory groups meet.
Right. And in order to be on these advisory committees, you would have to be appointed by a school board member. So
for yours, yes.
But I'm not sure for the other ones. I don't facilities.
It depends. For us, we have zone. That's why I said for the zones, a parent could be a zone rep. We also have business and industry, but when you have quorum issues, we may have quorum 1 month and not have quorum the next month. So it's been hard to vote. Let's say, okay, we're going to vote these community members on because we count. We're like, oops, we don't have quorum. We're not voting this month. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes we have quorum and we're so shocked we forget to vote on something. So we're like, oh wait, we have quorum, quick.
When we have quorum, we drop everything to vote because that doesn't happen often.
Right, exactly. So yes, board members have to, appoint people. They have to come. If you have other seats, which we have other seats, the zone representation, the community members, but you can always, if they're public meetings, and ours is more of a public forum. So we can take public comment at the end, but if somebody has like a burning question or concern about a school and we have somebody there that can answer the question or address it, we let them ask the question. Mm-hmm. All within 2 hours, which is sometimes a challenge.
All right.
Thank
so
you very much.
Come on over to our Instagram page because
are we going live? Okay.
We do a wrap up about what we spoke about with Dr. Lynch-Walsh. We will definitely have Dr. Lynch-Walsh back because she is a wealth of information and also someone who does not only advocate for facilities in the school, but she advocates in her community. So this is, that's what we're all about. We like to bring people on that does that. And then I look forward to your meeting on the 9th.
Me too.
She wants y'all to invite her when you meet.
Appreciate all right, thanks for having me.
No, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. It was a very good conversation. It makes me want to be even more involved than, and it was definitely education. I definitely
will invite you, Sean.
But we need action steps now. I got to figure that part out.
Yeah, we need action steps. So we're gonna go to our Instagram. If you haven't, like, share, subscribe our page. All right, we're on YouTube.
Page. Go on the YouTube page. We need to try to build that one up too. You can also watch on YouTube.
Subscribe on YouTube. We're on Facebook. We come here every Wednesday. We may not have a guest next week, but we sure gonna have some juicy information and some juicy conversations. Look at her face. I
was trying to think that if next week starts February 1st or something like that. I don't know what day that is. Is it February 1st?
Guys, make sure the state session starts soon. Be mindful of that. There's going to be some elections around Broward County in March. And so we'll bring you the list of people who are running. Remember, your vote is your superpower. All right. Your advocacy is your superpower. So go out there and advocate for what you believe in and for the people and your community. And don't be afraid, like Dr. Lynch-Walsh be coming up there, be talking to the dragons like, I don't feel the heat. She be like, I want all the smoke.
I don't want to say I told you so, but I told you so.
She be like, I want all the smoke. So you have that same attitude. You want all the smoke because when you are right and you're standing on the foundation of rightness, you can say what you want. It is what it is. All right.
Yes.
So see you all next week, Wednesday. Can't wait to talk to y'all. Visit us on our Instagram page, same name, Race and the Races. You can look us up and we're going to do a little recap. All right. Thank you again, Dr. Lynch-Walsh.
All right. Take care. Thanks for having me.
All right.
Good night, everybody.
See what these kids are up to.
Yep. Check on them, girl.
All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.